Everybody, my name is Mark Gallagher. I've been with Eurowall now back with Eurowall for a little over a year. I started with them when they first came to market back in 2011, and then got hired away, and I worked for a competitor that you guys might be familiar with that they love to say no to. So some of the things hopefully we're going to do today is say yes. So we're going to say yes to bigger sizes, bigger configurations, panels going one way, more glass. So all the things you guys love. So real quick, I just want to let you guys know that this is my second time doing these virtuals, but we're also going to be live with you guys. In fact, Wendy and I were just talking, September 6th, we're going to be in Pensacola. It's going to be our first time up in the Panhandle, which we're very much looking excited. We're very excited about that. In fact, that's Wendy and I's birthday. We just found out. So for those of you guys in the Panhandle, you've got to come out and wish us a happy birthday and get a CEU, because we have a new presentation that was just approved. So you guys will get to see this for the very first time. And then on the 19th of September, we're going to be in Miami. And then on the 20th, we'll be in Tampa. So I know Wendy and the gang will get all that information out to you, but it will be a new CEU that will be coming out. So real brief for those of you that are not familiar with Eurowall, or if you've heard about it, and we're a manufacturer that is located in Northport, Florida. And I get asked all the time, where's Northport? And that's from people all over the state. It's halfway in between Tampa and Fort Myers. So little town just right there on the west coast of Florida. In fact, when Ian came ashore last year, the eyewall came right over the plant. We were lucky enough that nothing happened, and we were able to continue producing panels. And it's kind of ironic that today's presentation, solutions for large openings in wind-borne and coastal areas, because we all know what June 1st means in the state of Florida. It's the beginning of hurricane season. So we're going to give you guys some ideas. We're going to talk about wind loads. We're going to talk about water pressure and all that wonderful things that we can do with glass to make people feel better and safer in their buildings, whether it's residential or commercial. So with that, let's get started. Obviously, Wendy gave you guys the housekeeping. This is an AIA approved course. Everyone that does turn in and does stay for the hour, they are going to get the accredited hours. As Wendy said, if you guys do request a certificate, we'll make sure that we get that for you. Typical legal stuff that we've got here. Obviously, anything that I say is not an endorsement for AIA. So please, though, if you do have some questions, I am going to try my best to answer them as I can. If I don't get to them during the presentation, I will respond offline and make sure that I get those answers back to you guys. Here's some more legal mumbo jumbo. And this is what we hope to do today. We're going to talk about types of door systems, door hardware, and the benefits of the application. So I'm not going to read all that. You guys are a lot smarter than I am. But basically what we're going to talk about are large glass openings for coastal areas, commercial or residential, in a wind-borne area. You know, before we always talked about Wind Zone 3 and HVAC. So everything that we're hearing down, we're going to have new building codes that are going to come in 2024. And because of the influx of storms that we've seen, and they're actually going a little further north into the Panhandle, you know, we saw what happened outside of, you know, the typical HVAC zone, which is normally Broward, Dade, Monroe, and Collier counties. A lot of the other states are getting hit. So in 2024, we're actually hearing that they're going to make the entire state of Florida an HVAC zone. So things are going to change. So I'll talk a little bit about Wind Zone 3, but really I'm going to focus on HVAC, because that's what's going to, you know, that's what the future is looking like. So this is broken up into 4 parts. First objective, we're going to talk about the large glass opening systems and describe their functions and impact benefits. Number 2, we're going to talk about how these glass wall systems can be used in the high velocity hurricane zones. And so that way we can get maximum glass and still make sure we hit those design ratings for you guys. We're going to talk about certain components, materials, some of the things that set us apart maybe from some of the other manufacturers. As I said, we are a Florida-based manufacturer, so we manufacture for the Florida environment. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then at the end, we're going to talk about maybe what's the best system and configuration that might be appropriate for your project. All right, let's jump into it. Let's talk about large openings and let's describe their functions as we get into it. I always like to start with folding. And the reason why I like to start here is because this is how we got into the business. We started out as a folding door company, impact and non-impact rated. We found that there was a need there was a missing need in the market because there was really one guy out there at that time. They were kind of dictating sizes and constraints, and then also budget. And I always like to talk about folding because folding is more the budget conscious when you get into these large operable systems. And I know some of you guys are probably sitting there laughing, going, "Yeah, there's nothing budget friendly about folding glass doors or large glass walls." But hopefully when we get finished talking about this, we're going to talk about some of the things that we might be able to make this a little more budget friendly. So that way these things aren't getting VE'd when you guys are going through your design process. And the reason why I like to start with folding is because all that weight is contained within the plane of the opening. It has a header, it has a sill, it's got two jambs, it has the frame. All that weight is contained in that plane of the opening. You're not having to carry that weight anywhere else. The panels, when they open, are stacked they're attached to each other, and they stack perpendicular to the wall, either inside or outside of that opening. I always like to think of and kind of compare it to a train. As a train starts to move down the track, it starts to pull the other cars with it. Well, that's the same thing with folding, because they are attached to each other. As you start to move them down the track, the other panels will follow with it, whether you're open or closing the system. Here you're looking at a residential application. Those panels stack 90 degrees perpendicular to the opening. Like I said, they can either stack inside or outside of the opening. We like to say, especially in a residential application, we like outward stack because we get a better weather performance. We get that water rating that is most important that we have here in the state. And that water rating, depending on the sill, which we have a standard sill, and I'll show you that in just a little bit, has a water rating of almost 9 PSI. Here's just some different applications and different pictures to kind of stoke your creativity of where I can put these things. But again, you have folding doors paired with sliding glass doors. And it's the ability about opening spaces up. It's connecting one space to another. It could be about taking a smaller space and opening it up to a lanai. So that way that room actually just carries out into that space. It just makes you feel like that space is a lot bigger. How about a cornerless system? So what you see here is a cornerless system. This has Florida product approval with an HVAC rating. This is an outward corner, but we can certainly do an inward corner as well. So what you're seeing here, it's 2 units. You got one unit that's opening away to the adjacent jamb, and then its other system is opening to the opposite jamb. When they come together, there is a post there that locks in place that's attached to one of the panels. It makes it snug and secure, so that way it hits the same design pressure rating that you would see with folding, with any folding door. You're probably wondering what a folding system, what their DP ratings are. And this is where we kind of are going to help you guys out, because some of the other manufacturers you might have dealt with, they have limitations with height. So typically most of them are about anywhere from 8 feet to about 10 feet in height. And then it determines the glass package. Am I using monolithic impact, which is just single layer impact without the airspace in there? Or am I using insulated impact? And why does that matter? Because of the weight. Typically with regular monolithic impact, you're looking at about 9 pounds per square feet. When you get insulated impact in there, you're looking at about anywhere from 8 to 9 pounds per square feet. And a lot of the manufacturers out there get very conservative, and they'll only, if you're going to go anything with insulated impact, they're going to tell you I can only do 8 feet or I can do 10 feet. Well, we can go to 12 feet. We can give you a swing door at 12 feet tall with regular impact or insulated impact with some crazy design pressures. These design pressures in HVAC can be plus or minus 65. If the panels are a little bit, if that opening is a little bit shorter, the DP rating can get up higher. I can get to a plus or minus 75. So what you're going to see here again is just the ability of allowing you guys to get creative with your design. I'm not going to tell you, no, I can't go above a certain height. I'm also not going to tell you I can only stack so many panels to one side. A lot of the manufacturers, because of the weight, they get conservative. They'll tell you they can only do a max panel of 6 per side. Well, I've done one recently that had 12. So we get asked all the time, what is the maximum opening for folding that I can do? And it's 330 square feet that we have product approval for. So however you want to configure that, left, right, all to one side, split in the middle, we can certainly do that for you. The other thing about folding too is, can it have a swing door? So on a day that, we were just talking before you guys got online about the weather, and I was in South Florida. And for those of you that are over in Broward and Miami and Palm Beach, we've had a lot of rain over the last couple of days. Well, you don't want to open the system up, but you still have the need to get in and out of there. So can I have an egress door? Sure thing. As long as it's an odd number. So whether it's panel 1, 3, 5, 7, whatever, that's going to be a swing door. And then we can have that where you have a multi-point handle on there with a thumb bolt and deadbolt key in there. So that way you can go in and out of there. But when you want to open the whole thing up, you fold the swing door back just like this configuration you're seeing here. This is a 5 right opening inward stack. So you fold the swing panel back on top of its brother there, and then you flip the twin point handles that I don't know if you can see them on the side. You flip them up, and that releases the locking rods that are inside the stiles of each of the panels. Everything is inside and concealed, so that way you have the sleek, good-looking design. You're not looking at any kind of surface-mounted locking rods. Everything's contained within the panel, so the only thing you're seeing is that lever at the bottom, which is the twin point lock. When you flip it and rotate it to the top like you see there, it releases those locking rods and then allows the whole system to slide. Here again, you can see this large space, panel widths. What can my panel width be? So at 12 feet tall in a HVAC, I can do a 3-foot wide panel. If I get a little bit, the height gets a little bit shorter, the panels can get wider and the design pressure can go up as well. So the ability to really be able to fill that opening up with less aluminum and more glasses, which all our clients want nowadays, we can certainly do that for you. Commercial application. These things are huge in restaurants. The reason I like about the restaurants are the ability, again, to create more dining opportunities. I was working with a restaurateur, and he had a situation very similar to this. He wanted to know what his return would be by opening up this wall. When we talked to him, he had 2 openings. We asked him, we said, how many seats do you think that's going to, or how many tables is that going to garner to the outside? He said he could probably add about another 9 tables. He was a little bit colder climate, so he was up north in the state, so he didn't have, wasn't able to use it all year long because it was in Jacksonville. They get a little chilly up there. And so what we asked him is, okay, help us understand that table. What kind of revenue does that generate for you? He said, having those 9 tables would generate me in my pocket about $20,000 extra each month. So if he gets 10 months or 11 months of patio space by adding these extra tables, you can see right there, that's a $200,000 ROI for him in his pocket. And he found out real quickly that the return was there for him. So he went ahead and hired the contractor, hired the architect. They drew this out, knocked the walls out, and he was able to achieve that. There's different sills that are available too for folding doors. You have the standard sill, like I had mentioned earlier, that has the water rating, has a 9 PSI. In a commercial situation where you have an ADA compliance that needs to happen, we certainly have that as well. So especially for restaurants where you have customers and wait staff and employees that are traversing in and out of these openings, you don't want a trip hazard. So we have the ability to provide that as well. Retail, retail has become really big in this space. The reason being is because unfortunately we see that every day on the news. Smash and grabs. Businesses are closed. People are able to get in there real quickly. Well, because of the impact rated glass and with the forced AMDA testing that we have, a retail owner can now close up his business rather quickly. He's not having to pull a screen down. Some of those things we see, lock it, exposing himself to what's behind him. They can close it, standing at normal height. They lock it and walk away. Great thing too is after hours window shoppers, as they're walking along, they can decide whether they want to go back and visit that store during the open hours. But when it's ready to open, they open everything up in a matter of seconds. That door is pushed to the right there. If there's any kind of retail racks or anything, because of the sill, there's nothing to step over. They can pull those right out into the space, and they're ready to go for business in a matter of time. So really important to see that. Event spaces, whether it's restaurants, whether it's, places that host big events, things like that, clubhouses. Again, just the ability to connect the inside to the outside. John, I apologize, I didn't introduce John, but John Kremer is an employee of ours, and he's on board here, backing me up in case we have some technical difficulty. And John and I were talking about this type of situation. We kind of find ourselves, and I don't know if it's because what we do for a living, we're in this space, but I always like to visit and give my business to places that have these large operable openings because one, I just want to be connected to the outside. I want to see what's going on. I want to have the sights, the sounds, and just enjoy that experience a little bit more. So again, just the ability to open these spaces up. More restaurant applications. This was really important during COVID too, because the ability to open these spaces up. I was working with a company, it's not in Florida, but it was in California. And California, as you know, had some of the most strict COVID restrictions in the country. And there, we had done a restaurant. So 3 sides of the restaurant were able to open up, and it was like an open air pavilion. And the health department there allowed the restaurant owner to have more inside table. So he was able not to have to rely solely on to-go food. He was able to retain more staff because he had the ability to have more tables for inside dining, because they said it was an open air pavilion. The air, because it was across the street from the beach, was a natural flush of air coming in and out. So just again, just ways for a restaurant owner to increase business. Window units. We get asked about window units all the time, whether it's residential or commercial. The ability to have a unit that you can sit on a countertop, not an issue. The other thing we have too for Florida product approval, you see that countertop unit there. Imagine if that was on the other side, where this is stacking to the right. You had a unit that was a full walk-through unit that had a egress door that stacked to the opposite side, and when completely open, there was no post there. Well, we can do that and meet Florida air requirements, wind requirements, and water requirements as well. So it's pretty cool to be able to open spaces up. So we like to think of ourselves as a solutions company. So if you've got an idea, please reach out to us. Like I said, we don't like to say no. We like to find ways to say yes. You guys get told no too many times by other people, so we don't want to do that for you. More restaurants. I'm going to inundate you guys. Hopefully you've gotten a chance to eat before you got to jump on this thing. I don't want to make you hungry. You've got something at your desk there, but that's a big space for us. You're seeing here's a situation where you have a door in the middle of the run. So you'll see that swing door that's right there in the middle. And then the two, it's going to have 3 doors that are going to go to the left, 3 doors that go to the right. So just different configurations. Segmented curve. We get asked all the time, hey, can I've got this radius, can you help me out with it? And I love to say yes, because we can certainly do it. We can do a radius up to about 7.5 degrees. You're going to notice here that this one is a very slight radius, because that bend is not so great. We can keep the panel widths a lot wider, because every time that there's a break in that track, that's where a new panel is going to be. If we get a tighter radius, the panels are going to be a lot narrower. So if you've had an opportunity to see a presentation that we did last year, there's a tighter radius in that one, and you'll notice that the panels are a lot narrower. This has Florida product approval, still has the same design pressure ratings that you would see, that plus or minus, at least plus or minus 65. Believe it or not, a radius wall actually has better wind performance, because as it starts to compress and the wind hits it, it gives it a tighter bond than a straight line. All right, multi-slide. Multi-slide is kind of a paradigm switch. Now, everything that I was just talking about was about opening spaces up, connecting spaces from one side to the other. Let's face it, it's June 1st. It's been hot here since February. We got maybe a little reprieve for a couple of weeks. So a lot of times when I talk to people about opening spaces up, they say, we live in Florida, we don't want to open spaces up, but we want to enjoy the view. So now we're talking about a sliding system that has really big pieces of glass. So in a HVAC, this system can go 12 feet tall, and those panel widths can be 5 feet wide. So that picture you're looking at here, the 2 sliding doors, that could be 12 feet tall and 10 feet wide, which is pretty cool. But the thing that I love is the interlock that's in between that is less than 1 inch. So you've got tons of glass, not a lot of metal, and you're going to get a design pressure rating of 120. So this thing is a tank. It also has a water rating of 12 PSI. So this is something that when you put it in, your customer or your client, their building is going to be protected, and they're going to have maximum daylight views. If they have that water shot, or if they just want to be able to see outside with not feeling like they're looking at a lot of metal, this is the perfect system for them. The other thing I like about this system is it's a bottom supported system. So all the weight is now carried on on the floor. Commercial, obviously when we came out with this, it was, we kind of started thinking about residential, residential, but commercial became a big thing, whether it's interior, exterior spaces. This is an awesome system because of the fact you can see there, if you look down at the sill, you'll notice that the sill is completely recessed into the floor. And the other thing that they've done, because it's concrete floor inside and out, they actually put concrete in between the runners where the panels slide on. So that track basically virtually disappears. If that floor was tile, we could put tile in that track. So that way everything totally, like I said, just disappears. You're able to slide in, move in and out of their wheelchairs, people walking through, not have to worry about stepping over anything. For those of us that lived in Florida for as long as we have, if you have that typical slider in your home or your place of business, I call them a toe jammer, that thing that you always hit your toe on if you don't remember to pick your feet up. It's a sill riser. And some of those sill risers can be anywhere from 2 to 4 inches, depending on the design pressure. So as I said, that design pressure that we can hit with this thing with a 12 PSI of water and a design pressure of plus or minus 120. Could you imagine on a traditional slider what that sill riser would be like? It would be 4 inches to 5 inches tall. So now we're able to achieve this with something that can be totally recessed. We call this a full embedded sill. If this was exposed to the elements and the overhang wasn't as great as what if you were at this restaurant, this is a place in Sarasota, they would not be able to get water out of there. Most sills like this, when they're fully embedded, where's the water going to go? So we actually provide a water management kit with this, where we have the ability to drain this thing and get the water out. So you're going to see some details on that a little bit further down. So again, this is an older product, but a lift and slide that we had. But again, just connecting spaces, opening things up, different configurations. This is what we would call an OXXO. So you have the 2 panels biparting in the middle. We can do that with the multi-slide. And here's just a view from the outside. All right, I went through that one pretty quick, but now we're going to talk about some pivot doors. So a pivot door, this was something, again, started out as a residential product. This has a design pressure rating, but it does not have a water rating because there's no sill. So this system can be 12 feet tall and 5 feet wide, and it has a design pressure rating of plus or minus 60. So really stout product, but the ability to have a big piece of glass and have this thing either pivot left or right, inside or outside of the opening. We can provide a water kit with this as well. But again, please remember, it does not have a water rating. So as long as they have a significant overhang, what you see here, then the pivot door is a perfect application for that opening. And the rule of thumb when it comes to pivots and overhang, whatever the height of the pivot door is, we need that overhang to be that. So if a pivot door is 10 feet tall, we need the overhang to be 10 feet tall, 10 feet wide that goes out from the house. If the overhang starts 2 feet above the door, so it starts at 12 feet, now we need that overhang to be 12 feet long. So whatever that is, you need to kind of add that to it. So that way the opening is protected from any kind of crazy rain that we get in Florida. Different glass packages that are available, different hardware. You're going to notice here that this one has a longer pull bar on it. So this thing can be anywhere from 1 feet all the way up to an 8 foot tall pull bar. Privacy glass. If you want to see the glass in there or have that privacy, we can do that. The other thing that I love about all our systems is what we glaze with. Our typical glazing is a 1/4 inch makeup. So if it's our monolithic impact, it's going to be 1/4 inch over 1/4 inch with an SGP interlayer. Why is that important? Because all of the major glass manufacturers, that's where all the kind of exotic glasses come from. So if you have a need for low iron glass, it has to be 1/4 inch. The thinnest that low iron glass is fabricated is a 1/4 inch. They won't do it in 3/16. So some of the other manufacturers in the state, they all glaze with a 3/16 over 3/16 for a 7/16 thickness. Well, it really handcuffs you to the type of glass you can use. It also handcuffs you to some of the lowy glasses that you can use, and also some of the turtle compliance that is needed with some of these glasses in these openings, depending on where they're facing. So blue glass, green glass, all the things that you might want to incorporate for your design. The minimum thickness on those is 1/4 of an inch. So now we're kind of taking the handcuffs off of you. You know, if you have a need for blue, green, low iron, frit glass, you know, just call us up and talk to us. We work with all the major glass fabricators to make sure we can get those glass needs for you. I did mention turtle code a little bit for some of you that might be new to the state. Turtle code is a federal statute that runs basically from Maine all the way around Florida to the Texas coast. In fact, we're in turtle season right now. So the turtles, as they come to shore, they lay the eggs. When the turtles are hatched, the reason why you have to have turtle compliant glass is that it has to have a visible light transmittance of 0.41 or less. And what that means is it lets 0.41% of the light out of the opening that's facing the water. So that way the turtles aren't attracted to it. And as they hatch, they think they're walking towards the ocean. Instead, they're walking towards the building. We want it to be a little bit darker, and that way they go back to the sea. So for those of you that are new to the state, that's turtle code. How about different types of wood and finishes for a pivot door? So what you're looking at here is it's an aluminum door, but we have a wood clad over glass. So different design elements, again, to be able to hit any kind of design need that your customer may have or that you intend. Come talk to us. We can certainly figure it out. Here's just a clad system, and looks like when we downloaded the system, the folding jumped over to the past the pivot. So you're going to see a little bit more folding. Here's a stainless steel clad system that we did up in New York. So again, the ability to do different types of metals, different types of finishes on the door, we can certainly help you out. Folding, again, an inward folding unit where the sill is totally embedded into the floor. So that way you have the ability to traverse in and out of that opening without any kind of trip hazard. Press boxes, for those of you soccer fans up in New York, the Red Bulls, you'll see that, but we did their press box. The ability to open spaces up with nothing blocking any types of views or anything like that. So whether it's a sweet box, or a press box here. We just did a tennis facility in Charleston where we did sweet boxes and press boxes again, because the ability to open that opening up, and whoever's sitting in there can see action from one side of the field to the other. There's no blind spots. You know, everything we've talked about has been obviously wind-borne areas, but you know, you may have a need for an interior application, and I'm just going to touch on it real quick. We get asked about, can you do something interior? Does it have any kind of STC rating? The ability to reduce sound. So all of our systems, whether it's a pivot door, whether it's the folding that you're seeing here, or the multi-slide, can be done interior. I did an interior office space using the multi-slide, and because of the system being recessed, thermally broken, and with the glass package, we found that system can get to the low 40s in an STC requirement. So the ability to be able to have big pieces of glass and still knock some sound down is pretty amazing. And the reason why they did this with this particular unit is it was an interior office space, the hallway, and then the windows from the exterior of the building. So the conference room was really dark. So now they were able to do 5-foot wide panels, 10 feet tall. With that little bit of aluminum, they got a lot of natural light that came from one side, from the outside, and bled into the conference room and gave it that natural light. But then because of the STC reduction, they were able to go in there, talk confidential with their clients, and what was being said inside stayed inside. So if you do have a need for interior spaces, that's something else you can reach out to us. Yes, we started as a Wind-borne company, but we do have the ability to do things interior. We're doing a ton of it. In fact, that's John that's on here, that's his hot button. You know, he and I both spent a lot of time on the interior spaces, and we know that that's a big thing. So think of us as you're doing any kind of interior work as well. We'd love to help you out with that. All right, let's get to objective 2. How are these systems used in high velocity hurricane zones? Let's talk about it. So as I mentioned before, you can have a wind zone that goes basically from Maine all the way around to Texas where the turtle codes were. You're going to notice that the areas that are red, the areas that have been hit recently, they have higher velocity wind zones. But one of the things, like I mentioned earlier, in the new building codes that are coming out, we're hearing basically from the Alabama line through Pensacola, where that event is going to be on September the 6th, all the way around to Jacksonville is now going to be designated as an HVAC zone. So the wind requirements will be changing. Here's just showing the state of Florida, and we all know that the counties I mentioned earlier, Broward, Dade, Monroe, and Collier, they do have the higher wind speeds that meet that HVAC requirement. But as I had said earlier, the panhandle's been getting crushed recently. We saw, unfortunately, what happened in Fort Myers last year. So these areas are going to be designated for higher wind speeds. And there's the HVAC from the old days, but we are going to kick that up. The Caribbean, for those of you that do any design work in the Caribbean, people are asking now for those HVAC products. We're shipping a ton of stuff all over the Caribbean. So again, we can certainly acquire that. We do an amazing job creating things and getting things to the freight forwarder, so that way it can get to your clients in a timely fashion. What are some of the test requirements and some of the things that we have to do for Florida building code approved? So TSA 201, 202, and 203. What those are TSA 1 are the high velocity hurricane that determines the impact testing. So when things are impact tested the old way for HVAC, it was, and I'm going to show you, you've probably seen this before if you've seen our presentation, but we have where we shoot it out of a cannon, a 2x4 shot at a cannon. For HVAC testing, that's hitting 4 places. For wind zone 3, it was always hitting 2. Well, now everything's going to be hitting 4. For TSA 202, that's the cycle testing of the wind speeds, and then 203 is the water. So it had to pass all 3 of those before anything could be approved for Florida product approval for HVAC and for wind zone 3. So let's talk about that. So this is the picture I was telling you about. If you haven't had a chance to ever see anything tested, go do it. It's like me, it makes me a little kid again when, we used to get to blow things up or beat things up. So the ability to when they cycle things in the lab, what they do is they fire it. They fire it at the glass, they fire it at the frame. They got to make sure everything stays intact. And then for the wind testing, what they do is they will bring in a jet engine and they will cycle that thing so it's pushing air at the unit. For HVAC, they had to cycle it for 50 times up to a wind speed of 175 miles an hour. They simulated that 175 mile an hour wind speed and were pushing it against that glass, and it had to stay in the frame. Now, the cool thing is when they do that, you can actually see it breathing. It looks like it's breathing. You can see it going in and out, it's flexing. And then once that stops, what they do is they stop the engine and then they reverse it. And then they simulate as the storm's coming, it circulates around. So what they call the dirty side, it's actually it's simulating that it's pulling the glass out of the frame. So they'll cycle test that for 50 cycles at 175 miles an hour. So if it passes that test, then it's got to get water cycled, and then they'll shoot water on it, and it can't have so much water, as I had said, like the 9 psi, 6 psi, just depending on what those ratings are for the sills. It's got to maintain that. So it's got to meet all 3 characteristics of water, impact, wind, before it can be hurricane approved. How do the components and the things that we use in our manufacturing, how do these affect the livelihood and the lifespan of our products? Well, first thing I like to talk about, especially when we start talking about folding, is what's better, bottom support or top support? And I worked for 2 different companies that standard was both. And what I found is really, I like a top supported system. And, I know what some of you guys are thinking is, well, I got to worry about deflection and I got to worry about the weight. Well, the deflection criteria for a top supported system and a bottom supported system are exactly the same. They're L/720 or 1/4 of an inch. So don't let that, you have to have the same support for a bottom supported system that the other manufacturer may provide as you do for a top supported system. But the reason why I like that the top supported system is the adjustability. You can go in and adjust this, a top supported system any point of the compass, I can bring it up, I can bring it down, I can bring it to the left or the right. So over the course of time, if any building has any settling issues or the openings shift a little bit, we can go in and adjust that thing so that way it doesn't turn into a really expensive fixed wall because that opening shifted, and now that bottom supported system is being pinched and the rollers and the wheels won't roll. So now we can raise that thing up and down, and that way your client's not going to have to worry about looking at a very expensive fixed wall unit. How about paint? Paint is a big thing. So there are some manufacturers that offer a 2603. What does that mean? It's basically an acrylic paint. And you'll see here, it gets a 1-year warranty, and that's from slight fade. If you've ever seen an aluminum product and it's got a chalkiness looking or feel to the product, that's from the wear and tear on the door, from the paint fading, whether it be from the environment, it could be from in an area that there's a lot of processing and manufacturing, from environmental issues of free radicals in the air that are being emitted from the processing plants. So it's all different types of things. Humidity, believe it or not, which affects the paint. So there's 3 choices. You have a 2603, which is an acrylic, which is probably has the worst performance and is the cheapest way to apply it. And then you have what majority of everybody uses, which is a 2604 powder coat. It has a 5-year warranty, and then also a Kynar. So you guys are used to speccing Kynar, especially in a lot of commercial applications because of the warranty factor on this. It has a 10-year warranty. Some manufacturers, even on coastal applications, will not offer that. But everything we do with our particular products is a standard 2605 Kynar. Our standard colors are white, black, and bronze. And then we also do offer a clear anodized. If you have a need for a custom color, we can custom color that thing just like you walk into Home Depot and they, give them a swatch, they can match it and give you your paint in a can. Well, we can certainly kind of do the same thing. You give us a swatch, we send it to our paint processor. They'll do a sample, they'll send it back for approval, and then we can match it. It does add a little bit of time to the lead time to get that done. But the ability to have a Kynar standard product, not something you have to ask for, is pretty amazing. And I know what you're thinking. Well, I know Kynar is really, really expensive. Typically it adds cost. So as I said, our white, black, and bronze is a standard cost. And working for a couple different manufacturers and being in the state of Florida for the last 15 years, I know a lot of the pricing. So I know we're typically about 25 to 30% less than a lot of the national big boys that are out there producing folding doors and sliding doors, and that's with a typical powder coat finish that they're offering. So we're able to come in under budget and still give you that 10-year warranty, which is pretty cool. And here's just the different charts showing the difference between the 2603, the acrylic in black, and then the light blue, the powder coat, and then the Kynar in the dark blue. Just the effects of salt spray. Humidity, as I mentioned, is a huge, huge thing that happens. Erosion resistance, that's basically the free radicals I was talking about. Gloss retention, you can see the acrylic is completely out the window. And then the ability to kind of resist that chalkiness that we see. You see it a lot really in bronze colors. Some of these commercial properties that you see that just looks kind of dull and chalky, that's what's happening. It's just that the paint is breaking down and it's getting that chalkiness looking. What are some of the different things we can manufacture our products out of? You see a thermally broken system, a wood clad. So this is a great situation if you ever want to do a two-tone, where you want to have one color on one side and then the ability for the client to pick a color on the interior. So the wood clad can be done on an interior application only. So you can have that white, black, or bronze or custom color on the outside, and then you can do a wood clad. The standard wood clads are a white oak and a sapelli mahogany. Anybody that wants to paint sapelli mahogany kind of makes me shake a little bit. That should be stained, but hey, your client, they can do what they like. And I like to say this because then they can also paint it to match the trim, whether they're going to stain it or paint it. So that way it'll match the existing trim around the opening as well. And then the standard aluminum in a non-thermally broken. We can do the faux wood grains. I think we have 12 now that are standard color. And what that is, it's basically, it's a vinyl resin that gets put on, and then it's heat treated. So it binds itself to the aluminum structure itself. And then the pivot application that I showed you earlier, where you had the clad over glass. So you have that wood door appearance, but then there's still glass underneath of it. Different glazing things I had mentioned. I had mentioned the fact that up at the top, the impact, that's a monolithic impact, quarter over quarter with an 090 inner layer. The insulated impact again is that quarter with the airspace, and then the 9/16 on the interior. So the ability again to do all the different glass packages that some of the others can't do because they only glaze with 3/16. Various different types of low E coatings. Like I said, we work with all the major glass fabricators. So if you're working, depending on a commercial or residential property, we can certainly make sure we do anything to match the window package that you guys are speccing in your project. And again, low E coatings, how do they work? It's a reflective material that's on the outside piece of the glass. It's typically on surface 2. So if you look at the picture where the low E is, the side that is outside facing the sun, that's surface 1. Surface 2 is on the inside of that piece of glass that is next to the inner layer. Surface 3, interior of the home next to the inner layer. And then surface 4 is interior of that space. So all the low E coatings are typically on surface 2. Why is that important? So that way they don't scratch, whether it's rocks from lawn equipment or just over window washers and things like that. So that way it's protected because it is a metallic finish. It's the ability to, it reflects that back out of the building. So that way we can keep that solar heat gain down, which is really important down here. Where John is in the process of transitioning from in New York. They're more worried about letting that sun absorb in because he's up north in the crazy part of the country. So they want to actually bring that in. So the solar heat gain number is different. They want to have it to come in. So they're more worried about the U factor. They want to bring that heat in to help heat the spaces up. So just different things to think about. And then tints, as I mentioned, whether it's a gray tint, a blue tint, a green tint, if you have to worry about turtle code, it's not an issue. We can certainly hit all those. All right, we're going to kind of get through some summaries here. I had talked about the curved wall. So with the folding, we can certainly do a curved wall, straight, different configurations. As I mentioned, if there's an odd number of panels, that's always a swing door. So this is showing a swing door in the middle. The one at the bottom is a 5-panel to the left. That's showing the swing door in the end. The segmented one, which I call it a cornerless system, the ability to have a complete open corner where there's no post, as long as that weight in the ceiling or the roof is cantilevered somewhere else, you can open that thing up and get 100% use of that space. Here's just different configurations showing folding. Swing door at the jamb, and then the other 4 panels going away. The swing door in the middle with the 3 left, 2 right, or all panels going to the left. And of course, whatever you do to the left, you can also do to the right. Sliding configurations. Anytime you see an O in a sliding configuration, that's a fixed panel. It's not going anywhere. So the ability to have different sliding panels can go all to one side, or they can go to both sides. We can do up to a 5-track. So as I had mentioned before, could you imagine a 5-foot wide panel, 10 feet tall, 5 panels all going one way? You could do a 25-foot opening with all panels going one way. John and I did a project up in New York, up in the Hamptons, where we did 5 panels one way, 5 panels the other. That thing was a beast. Because they were outside of HVAC, we were able to go a little bit wider. That was actually a 60-foot opening. So anyway, the ability to basically just let you guys get crazy and creative when it comes to design needs. The cornerless system that you're seeing on the top right-hand corner, different stacking configurations. The other thing nice I like about sliding is you get 100% use of that opening in pockets. So all the panels can go tucked away into a pocket, so you can have 100% use of that space. Here's the different sill configurations for folding. So the standard sill, that's the one I was talking about that has the water rating of 9 psi. you're going to notice that it's got a 2¼ riser on there, but you can embed that so that way the finished floor, the tile, whatever's on the interior of that space is flush. So it's just a natural step down. The system can be drained as well. So if it's not embedded, which you'll see over on the right-hand side, that's called a half embed or a floor finish. We'll weep that in the plant. We'll make sure that the weep holes are done properly and they'll weep out of the face. If it's a full embed, we want that to go out the bottom. So that's typically done in the field. So they'll weep that, but if a water management kit's involved, then there's no weeping because we're going to provide the tubing for it. The modified standard sill is just like the standard sill, but it's now had the riser been removed. So that way you have finished floor smooth from interior to exterior. Again, it doesn't have a water rating, but we do have a water management kit to help get that water out of there. And then the ADA sill, which does have that little bit of rise there to it to allow wheelchairs and other things to get in and out of that opening. It does have a small recess on that. You'll notice it's 3/8 of an inch, which is not bad. Other company I worked for, theirs recess was 2 3/8 inches. So it does have a little bit of a recess there. The multi-slide, as I mentioned, we can do up to a 5-track. You'll notice that that track is pretty wide. So you got to think about not only the head and the sill and the head, but you also got to think about the jambs. So whatever the width of is on the sill, the jambs are going to mimic that. So you got to make sure you have enough wall space if you're doing something that big to attach that jamb to. You're noticing that little curve thing on the outside. We call that a condensation cap that goes to the interior of the home or the opening. And that just is another well or layer of protection to keep water out. In the plant, you're going to weep this out the front. And then in the field, if any water were to get over that riser, that last riser where the panel rides on, they're going to drill holes down into that right past that, right in front of the condensation cap. So that way it'll allow it to get out, because in the factory, they will put, if this is a half embed or a floor mount, they will put holes every so often per the product approval. So that way the water will run out the front. If it's a full embed, then they're not going to do any weeping because they don't want any water going out the side, because there's more than likely going to be a water management kit. And here's the water management kit. So you're noticing here with the modified sill, we provide the tubing. One of the things important, I'd like to talk to the general contractor before this system is ordered, because I need to understand where they're going to run this water into. Is it going to go into some sort of French drain? What are we going to tie it into? Because as they're pouring concrete, we need to make sure that they have conduit that they're going to run through that concrete, and the tubing is going to be right where the sill is going to go get installed. So that way, as the installers come in, they can set the sill and tie the tubing in and get the water out. Here's the different applications for the floor mount for the sliding. You'll notice here the top one is a top mount. It's just sitting on top of the floor. There is going to be a little bit of a step over, but then they have the half embed where the interior finished floor, it goes right to the top. You'll notice that height on that sill track is 2 1/8. The water release valve on the front, that's done in the factory, both top and bottom. You'll see that, so that way the water will come out. The one thing that has to be done in the field is right where that condensation cap is, with the little curve. In the field, they will drill a hole in that, and then it will tie into the water relief valves that are in the front and that go run through the system itself. And then for things that are a full embed, where everything is flush from interior to exterior, that's the water management system that we provide. You'll notice that there's 2 places that we attach the tubing. One is in the middle of this sill, and then also at that point where the condensation cap is. The pivot door. The pivot door that I had talked about does not have a water rating, but if you do have a need to, you're worried about water and you want to just have an extra layer of precaution, we can provide a water management kit for that. It's a U channel that gets basically put just below it. It's about 7/8 by 7/8, 7/8 inches wide, 7/8 inches deep, has the water tube, but then you can bring your finished floor, your tiling, so that way you just have a small line, and any kind of wind-driven rain that may get through that will go right into the water management system and get out of there without going into the home. All right. Well, I'm right at the 51 mark. I see that we've got some questions. There's my phone number to the office, my email address. Any of you that have any questions, please reach out to me. I'd love to, help see what I can do to answer them. Let's see if, let me go into the chat box here. See what some of these things are. Okay, I see all that. That's the current even space, sill track, looks almost 3 inches high. I think we answered that with it's 2 1/8. So, but if you got any questions, I'll make sure that I get these, what is the best system for reducing sound transmissions? And that would be the multi-slide. That one has the low 40s. Have you run any ADA concerns reference with the floor track folding systems? No, and I apologize. I should have answered that before, because remember I said that it's an 1/8 inch below the floor, and we have them all over the state. So, but if you have any questions, please reach out to myself or to even John, and you can introduce yourself to him, make him feel welcome in the state. He's like everybody else from New York. He's moving into Florida too. So thanks, John, and welcome to the state. And then also, hopefully I'll see you guys in person on September the 9th, the 19th, or the 20th, or I'm sorry, the 6th, the 19th, and the 20th in Pensacola, Miami, or Tampa. And it will be a new presentation. So just got approved. So it'll be something different. Thanks, you guys.